magkamali? For investors here today, beginning or existing.
Yeah, very good question. So obviously, yes. I mean, pwede naman magkamali. Hindi lang pwede magkamali. It's almost inevitable that we're all gonna make mistakes, right? But the good thing is, for each of these mistakes, diba, these are also opportunities for us. Of course, we have to reflect on it. We have to be open-minded. We have to listen to experts. Right? And so experience is always the best teacher. So hindi lang pwede, it's inevitable, no? Kung pwede lang na to choose not to make mistakes, then why not? But
And sana yun na
it's
yung
not
pinili
impossible.
natin
Yes,
lahat.
yes,
Right,
exactly.
right. So what's the best course of action if in case you find that you're stuck with something that, it wasn't as you expected?
Okay, so yung mga ipet, are you talking about yung mga ipet? Okay. Yeah, for me, to be honest, that's really the hardest question to answer. Diba? So I do get a lot of questions now. Okay, let's say stock XYZ is down 80%. What do I do now? I'm down 70%, 80%. What do I do now? And to be honest, I'd rather prefer that you ask that before you buy than to ask me after it's down 70%. Why? Because of course it's down a lot, and usually it's for a good reason. Not all the time, but usually it's for a good reason. The problem is you're emotionally attached already. And the worst case is if I tell you to sell, okay, and because it's oversold, it rallies 20% next week, murahin mo pa ako, di ba? Kasalanan ko pa. So, siguro, to answer that, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but to answer that, siguro, my best answer would be, if you think that the process is wrong, okay, you fell for the hype, whatever. If the process is wrong, then just scale out. Just scale out. Meaning, sell in tranches. Diba? Para pag nagbenta ka, 20% muna. Kasi masakit hindi ko kaya 100% lahat. Diba? 20% muna. At least pa nag-rally next week, okay lang, may 80% pa ako. Pag namatay, okay lang, at least nakabenta na ako 20%. Right? And then maybe sell over time. And then, if it rallies, that's an opportunity to get out. Diba? Assuming the process is wrong, okay? If you're buying solid companies, yung 4Ps, leaders, right? Even if you're down, you're generally okay if your horizon is much longer.
Okay, thank you very much for humoring me. I had to ask that kasi we've been debunking, you started it, Sir Edmund started it, na parang we have to zoom out a little bit.
Yes.
There are common mistakes that investors do, beginner investors can do, or even existing investors, right? And I also like the way you put it, the analogy that you started with, to connect with us all. Yung mga 6-6,
Yes.
5-5, double sales na yan, kung kaya natin kilatisin, yung
Yes.
mga binibili natin
Yes.
sa sales, bakit di natin kayang gawin for our stocks, right?
Exactly.
It's almost the same as that.
Yes,
The same
exactly.
concept. Sige, going into your presentation now, you talked about a mistake that people make, that they avoid leaders. Sometimes, medyo mahal din kasi sila. Not sometimes, but there are leaders, industry leaders that are expensive. And investors may have a limited capital to start with. Meron bang second tiers or leaders that are affordable?
Well, the good thing is it's scalable, di ba? The number of shares you could scale it down. But if you reach that point that if you're talking about just, let's say, anything below like 20,000 maybe, then maybe for those smaller names, di ba? Smaller accounts, maybe you could consider funds. Diba? That's more diversified. Diba? So you could still have exposure to these leaders because most of these funds would buy the leaders anyway, right? So that's also one way for you. And I think later on we're going to be talking about funds also, right? But yeah, so for me, it shouldn't be an issue. Some people kasi, I think the bigger issue is sometimes, because their capital is small, sometimes they don't want 20% growth. If I tell you, 20,000 pesos, this year you're gonna make 20%. Usually, that's a big amount, right? If you have millions of pesos, 20% is a big amount. But if you have 20,000, maybe 20%, anong gagawin ko sa 4,000 pesos, di ba? Lugi pa ako sa oras ko. But ironically, the more we chase growth, the more na nagmamadali tayo, the harder it is to grow our portfolio. So unfortunately, di ba, parang slow and steady, di ba, the turtle wins the race, di ba? So, yeah, I mean, process over results. I know it's always very enticing, kahit naman ako especially when I was starting, di ba? Everybody's more excited about yung mga bagger issues, di ba? Yung mga potentially double, triple. Kasi, di ba, how else, di ba? But siguro, maybe to add a little bit of, financial parang advice, di ba? That's why, especially if you're starting out, it's important to invest, to add to your account regularly if you're starting small. Diba? So, while you're small, learn the right process, apply the lessons, huwag kayong magmadali, and at the same time, continue to fund your account regularly, 20% of your income, right? And eventually, before you know it, your account is now much bigger. And you know now how to do it. Hindi lang yung chamba-chamba na lang. And, di ba? Kasi, di ba, minsan, if you do it the wrong way, maybe you get lucky once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th time, pag minalas ka, you're gonna email me and you're down 70%. And I don't want that. I don't want that to happen, right? So isang mali lang, it almost reverses all of your gains kasi it's not sustainable, di ba? So, slow and steady wins the race, I guess, is my point.
Very helpful. You talked about reports that we can refer to specifically for those names, your insights. For my question just now, calling the shots, is it for that list?
Yes,
Hanapin
yes.
namin doon kung ano yung mga second years or leaders
Yes.
that, maybe we can look at
I mean-
exploring even with limited funds.
Yes, exactly. So calling the shots, no, so I often say, kasi a lot of people when they're starting out, they say, sometimes they're intimidated eh. Kasi ang daming technical terms, di ko naintindihan. Di ba? But what I often say is just read every single day. Di ba? I'm sure lahat kayo, ano ba, TikTok na ba ngayon? Di kasi ako TikTok or Facebook or Lazada.
Konti na
Malay
lang,
ko
baka
kung ano yung
makita
app.
ka na namin
Di ba?
doon.
Easily you could spend 1 hour doing nothing, right? Di ba? 2 hours doing nothing. Right? Just spend 15 minutes a day. Diba? Instead of diba, your leisure time, just 15 minutes every single day for 1 year, for 2 years. If you do that, you'll be surprised. Diba? At the end of the day, And calling the shots is just 1 publication a month. So it literally needs just 10 minutes a month of your time. So, what else do you want, right? And you can even scroll down to the bottom and just make it a minute a month, right? So,
Pinadali pa lalo.
yeah, if you really want.
Thanks for breaking it down for us like that. You talked about cyclicality also. Sorry, natatawa pa rin ako sa mga analogy mo eh. Kasi talagang tatamaan ako. Una, consumer ako na palaging bumibili sa mga double-doubles. Ngayon naman, TikTok. Dami kong sinasayang na oras. Anyway, so you talked about cyclicality, Charles. How, the position that we're in now, specifically here in the Philippines, with local equities, with these valuations, how often, in your years of experience, how often do opportunities like these come along? Ilang beses ka na ba nakakita ng ganito?
The answer is 1, right? So it really happens a long time. What do I mean by that? Just a quick anecdote because we have time, no? Quick anecdote lang. When I was starting, I started kasi 2010, 2010. When I was starting, wala pa ako experience before. I didn't have much experience then. So, and then, of course, bull market, diba? So 2011, bull market. And then, during the bull market, of course, you buy, you make money, and you look for another thing to buy. And I've always wondered na, bakit ganito ang mumura ng mga stocks? Diba? Tapos pag bumili ako after 6 months, I make a lot of money. Right? Bakit ganun? How can people be so stupid, quote unquote? At that time, I didn't understand. Right? So what am I trying to say? At that time, I didn't understand. But now that we're at the opposite end of that scenario, now I understand why. Because now, every single people here, every single analyst that you ask, kahit na hindi na ako, mura ba yung Pilipinas? Mura ba yung company XYZ? May mga ilang exception, but mura ba yung company XYZ? The answer is yes. But no one likes to buy. Why? Because of sentiment. Yeah? That's the thing, because of the sentiment. It's just at the extreme now. Of course, I'm not saying to go all in and tomorrow is gonna go up. That's not my point. But when it reverses, you're gonna look back today and say that, anong iniisip ko? 5 times PE, good company, hindi ko binili. Di ba? And then now, at that time, it's 10, 12 times PE. Paano na? Ano ang gagawin ko? Di ba? So, again, zoom out. Eventually, it's gonna come. How many times have I seen it? Wala. One whole cycle pa lang ako in the Philippine market. Kasi, as Edmond mentioned, from 2009 to 2013 was very, very, very strong. That's the left side of the emotional cycle of investing. Yun yung akala ko noon na parang ang dali-dali, di ba? I could be an analyst forever, I could be an investor forever, no? So I'd be very rich. Yung pala, di ba? The next 10 years would be the other side of the coin. Di ba? So hopefully, di ba, we reach the flip side again. So, very rare, I guess is my point.
Yes, I
Ang
hope.
haba ng sagot, eh. No?
No,
Very
that
rare.
was very helpful. Marami tayong anecdote. Kasi kailangan minsan ng kwento eh. Para matandaan, di ba, ng mga tao. So I guess we have a few questions on Slido. Let's pull some up. Which sectors are resilient or considered defensive in today's market environment? Asked by Dr. Alvin De Jesus.
Usually those that are tied to consumption, diba? And maybe utilities, right? So I gave a few of my favorites a while ago, right? So like your favorite, basta the trick is to stick with the market leaders. No? So for example, consumer, so Jollibee, URC, SM, I consider them consumer, SM Prime. These are all very, very resilient. And then you have your power companies, AP, right? Yeah, so I guess those would be my answers.
Consumer and utilities. Next question. Do you have any more?
Just to add lang, of course, banks, hindi naman sila typically defensive, but they're benefiting from today's environment because of the high interest rates. No? So maybe that could also answer that question.
Thanks for that. How should I allocate my investments in different sectors that would benefit the most when the market recovers?
Okay, very good question. Now, this one is the flip side naman. Diba? We're not talking about the defensive one, but when it recovers. So meaning, if you remember my slide a while ago on the cyclicality, the cyclical weakness, the biggest example I could give there would be the property segment. Kasi they're the worst hit today. Right? They're the worst hit today because of the high interest rates. And I think, and the BPOs, but I think there's also a good opportunity there when the market recovers. Not today, when the market recovers. So that's the critical thing, right? So I guess I would say properties.
All right. That's it. That was so much learnings. Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you for breaking it down for us, your many years of experience. Tama ba? Okay, no more cues on other questions? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
May humabol pa. No problem. From Ann Garcia, when at a loss, when do you wait under the principle of cost averaging, and when do you pull the plug on a stock?
Very, very good question. So I guess my answer is it depends on your strategy. It depends on your approach. Okay? So basically you could do either thing. But you have to decide before the fact. Okay, that's the critical thing. So meaning, kung trader ka talaga, kasi what are the pros of being a trader? You could theoretically maximize your capital, di ba? In and out. Hopefully, you could make more. But it's also much harder, right? But if that's your strategy, then by all means, you should sell at the correct, levels, at the breakdown points or at your stop loss, right? You should always immediately sell. Versus on the other side, diba? If you're more of a longer term investor, more of a strategic investor, then with a longer horizon, the benefit there is that it's in a way much easier to do, right? You don't have to be as active, you don't have to monitor as much, right? And in a way, it's less stressful in some cases, right? So if you're that investor, then yeah, just follow your plan. The only thing we're avoiding is confusion. Parang pag-confused ka, di ba? Wherein you're starting off, you're buying this because you want to time it, you're a trader, you're timing it, it goes down, suddenly you become a long-term investor. Diba? So that's what we're avoiding. But as long as you're sure, diba? No. I know long-term, I know it's a temporary weakness, but I'm a trader, I break down, may weakness na ni-report, I'll sell it, I'll just buy it back eventually. Diba? So it depends on your strategy. The important thing is that you have to be consistent. You cannot change in the middle of the trade. Okay?
Very helpful. So at the onset pa lang, kailangan consistent ka na. You're sure
Yes.
of your investing goals, who you are as an investor. All right. Any more questions?
Okay, this one. How do you know when sentiment is about to turn?
Oh, okay. Same ano kasi,
Okay.
asker.
Yeah.
How do you know when sentiment or the market is about to turn or when a cycle is about to end?
Of course, it's not easy. Diba? Kung madali lang, di mayaman na tayo lahat. But some clues would be the interest rates. I guess that's the most important clue. Diba? Interest rates. So, now interest rates are not going up anymore, but they're also not declining. So that's one thing I monitor every day. Basically, I also look at fund flows to the region. You could look at that. Lahat naman available online. So emerging markets index, I look at that because we're part of the emerging markets. Diba? Now, US market is going up, but the Philippine market is not. So some people are asking, bakit mahina yung Philippines? Is it because of local factors? I would say not really. Because regionally, we look exactly the same. Diba? So I just don't have the chart right now, but it's EEM, Emerging Market Index. Right? So you can look at that. That's also another indicator of sentiment. And lastly, even just anecdotes. Diba? Do you see, like, at the peak of the market, you see a lot of people excited about the market, opening accounts, inviting their friends left and right. Right? Now, wala, mas mahirap, di ba? Mas mahirap yung ganyan. In fact, a lot of people are maybe quitting, growing tired, di ba? Losing interest in the market. So even anecdotal evidence could also help.
Few different things, but thanks for itemizing those. Few more questions on Slido. From Elvin Ting, would you suggest to avoid global stocks or feeder funds for now and focus on more on local stocks or funds given the current situation?
Okay, so of course, I'm gonna answer that, but caveat muna, walang sisyan, ha? It's my personal opinion. So, yeah, but for me, simply because we're further along the cycle, as Edmond mentioned a while ago, yung US mahal pa rin, local, matagal nang mura, matagal nang umalis yung mga foreign funds. So I would, in fact, if it was me, just focus on the Philippines, right? Especially as a longer-term play rather than, if you're gonna trade it, fine, you could trade it, but it's hard to trade funds, right? So, yeah, I would just focus on the Philippines. I think I'm more optimistic here locally than in the US or in the global markets. But it could just be me. There were no guarantees, no? Di ko alam yan.
What is the best consumer company? From Jenny.
Best consumer company. I gave 4 a while ago. 4 very good options. Again, I'll remind. So Jollibee, URC. Maybe you could even add Monde, but they have a temporary issue, in my opinion. But yeah, they're there. And SM and SM Prime. But DNL also, a good company, but with temporary issue. So it depends on your style also, but those names. Ang dami, no? Best lang pala tinanong. SM na lang. Nasa SM
Ayun,
naman tayo.
kunalify niya yun.
Para hindi tayo paalisin.
Thank you, SMX Aura. What do you mean by no interest? Omar G.
Okay, yeah, so I just didn't go over it because of, time constraints. But I suggest that you look through the emotional cycle of investing, di ba? And what characterizes each part is the overwhelming emotion that people feel. During a bull market, hindi ka naman tatamarin pumunta ng seminar or tatamarin gumising sa umaga. During the bull market, I remember we wake up so excited to go to work, right? Because you're expecting to make money. So at each stage of the cycle, you could just maybe if you could think like survey the crowd, di ba? Ano yung overwhelming emotion? And right now, the overwhelming emotion is people are tired. They don't care anymore. If you tell them, uy, let's say Metrobank is cheap or GT Cap is cheap, huh? What's new? Alam ko na yan eh. Ayoko na mag-invest. Diba? So these emotions that you're feeling, those are the things that characterize the no interest stage. So basically, walang gana, literally, no interest in the market today. Volumes are down 10-year lows, right? So, yeah.
Next question. How to identify if a stock is recession proof, from Spencer J.
Yeah, so I often say that, investing in the stock market is entrepreneurial. So you have to analyze it from a businessman perspective. So the most important is the product. You have to understand the product. If the product is, for example, Chicken Joy, pag nagka-recession ba, hindi kami pupunta ng Jollibee? Oh, di recession proof, di ba? If the product is, let's say, your condo, not as a recession proof. So it's the product. It's about understanding the product and determining, right, during bad times, how much will it be affected by the headwinds.
Thank you. Next question. May smiley. Can you share what kind of industries as of this year that is now experiencing that so-called in-end game or in declining stage?
Hindi. For example, before, di ba, the telcos had this one, di ba? Parang di man the traditional text messaging, right, we're declining now. It's offset a little bit by broadband, but I'd categorize it more like stable or mature. Declining would be like, tobacco, for example, the tobacco industry, di ba? So we have, taxes are increased every year, right? And I think more and more every year. For example, the total pie is shrinking, right? So yeah, that's one example.
In a lack of interest environment, what would attract liquidity in the stock market?
This is the problem of all the companies listed today. Diba? Lack of interest, how do we attract? That's the question that I get every single time. And the funny part is, it feeds on itself. Parang chicken and egg yan. Diba? If there's no interest, people would exit. More people would exit, and there's going to be even less.
Lower interest.
But on the flip side, if there's now increasing interest, more people, parang umaakyat na. And then, so it feeds on itself. Diba? Nagiging loop siya, nagiging cycle siya. But what jumpstarts it? That's a very difficult question. Maybe, some are saying maybe it's the foreign funds coming in. I'm not 100% sure of that. Some are saying maybe at some point, valuations will just be too good to ignore. Maybe that's also one possibility. What else? But to be honest, it's really a difficult question, and it's so hard to say. But yeah, I don't have a good answer for that one. A lot of potential ones, but I don't have a definite answer.
From Mary Lolarga, may I know your thoughts on MPI? Do you expect the new valuation company to make the tender offer higher? Okay,
sige. This unavoidable question. No? Okay. We've always said that we feel like the 4.63 initial indication was a low price. So it's a super, it's not an attractive price. However, we've always said before also that as small investors who could not, if you cannot risk getting your stock delisted, because that's the worst case scenario, right? Let's say, kasi mura yung 463, you don't tender. If they get enough shares, the company would get delisted. When it gets delisted, yes, you still have your MPI shares, but it's going to be so difficult to sell it already. Right? So our advice, even if we disagree with the 4.63 offer price, our advice at that before, even until now, is that just to take whatever they're offering. We're basically at their mercy. We hope they don't get the number of shares so that they won't delist. But you just have to take what they give you. Okay, the second part of the question is, what do I expect now? I think there's a good chance, in my opinion, that they might revise the offer price because, at least in my opinion, they've seen a lot of pushback for this price. And so I think it could be a little higher. Of course, no guarantees there, Don't rush buying, go all in MPI, hoping for a higher tender. There's also a chance na hindi matuloy yung tender. Any kind of tender at all. Right? Because as of now, they're in the process of talking to their independent valuation experts, right? Figuring out what the fair price is. If they don't agree, di ba, in any sale naman, the buyer and seller has to agree. If they don't agree, there's a chance it's not gonna push through, right? But yun nga, if you're holding to your MPI, I suggest whatever they offer, even if it's a low price, effectively we don't have a choice. Of course, if you can risk getting delisted, then, and if you think it's unfair, then by all means, you don't have to, it's your choice, it's your shares, right? You don't have to tender it. But for those who don't want to get stuck with a stock that's not listed, then I think we don't have a choice but to tender it. Okay?
That seems to have been the last question. Thank you very much, Charles, again.
Okay, thank you.